Well, I am going to go ahead and call the April 11th regular Seward City Council meeting to order at 7. Chief, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And this time, Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Tonight's roll call: Wells.
Here.
Osenga. Here. Demas.
Here.
McClure.
Here.
Casagranda. Here. Calhoun.
Here.
Mayor
Yes.
Terry, excuse me.
Yeah.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearings. We do have 2 public hearings, so if you want to speak to flexible use within the construction site camping provisions, or you want to speak to the Pacific Resurrection Bay Seafoods lease, you do not have to speak at this time. You'll speak under public hearing. This portion is for the rest of the agenda. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes. And if you could say if you live inside or outside city limits. Is there anyone signed in to speak?
There is no one signed in.
Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak? Yes.
Linda McCann, outside city limits. This is just a public service announcement because our borough, Seward's Borough State Rep, Ben Carpenter, is going to have a town hall this Friday at the library at 6 o'clock. I was just trying to find the agenda. One of the things I know was election security, and I don't remember what else, but just, he's not my rep anymore, because I'm out with Kodiak now, but you all have him, and so I think everyone should go and hear what he has to say and give me your feedback.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, and no one else, has anyone else signed in?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, hearing and seeing none. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have one change. If we could, under resolutions, Resolution 2022-054, that actually, if we could move that to other new business items, it will be item number 2, and it will be discuss HP's recommendation of a downtown historic district to establish a new historic business district. So that move. And then, Councilmember Wells?
I'd like to request that Resolution 2022-052 be moved to discussion and not on the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll take that off consent. Any other changes? Great, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Thank you. And just for clarification, that was 052, is that correct? Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda as amended. Calhoun?
Yes.
Casagranda?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda have been approved and approved on tonight's consent agenda. Resolution 2022-051, accepting and appropriating American Rescue Plan Act federal grant funds, SOA-DCCED, in the amount of $676,748.30 for the purpose of investment in water and sewer infrastructure. Resolution 2022-053, accepting and appropriating the 2022 Volunteer Fire Assistance Grant in the amount of $4,765.80 and authorizing the matching funds of $530.20. And you have approved the March 29th, 2022 City Council special meeting minutes from the first special meeting that evening.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is special orders, presentations, and reports. There are no proclamations or awards. I might just make a note for the public and council and to administration and the clerk. At the next meeting, we'll have an item so that we can make a verbal report on our trip to DC, so that we can keep everyone updated. But we'll defer that to a time where we have the city manager in person. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report. That starts on page 4. And so I'll turn it over to Jeanette on the phone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to give some information about today's event that I attended. It's the Lisa Murkowski Infrastructure Grant Symposium. It was a really good event with over 1,000 attendees. And just a few highlights. One, Lisa Murkowski was here, Senator Murkowski was here and addressed everyone. And also there was a really touching tribute to Congressman Don Young and the work that he did for Alaska. There were a few other presentations, and then in the afternoon there were all the state departments, all of them, but most state departments, DOT, Department of Interior, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, FEMA, EPA, USDA, Department of Commerce, Denali Commission, and the East EC, Department of Transportation, again the Commissioner spoke as well. And so there were the presentations from the departments, but then their staff were in the other room and had tables set up that we visited with them and to gain some more information. The staff will also be here again tomorrow, and Alaska Municipal League is leading tomorrow's event with a focus on municipalities. So it's been a really good event so far.
Great, thank you. Did you want to highlight anything else from the city manager's report, or should we just turn it over to questions?
Over to questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the city manager's report? I'll just jump out, and I just want to highlight and thank the electric department. On page 9 of the packet, they talk about, and this is being generated from some of the internal auditing that they're doing on themselves. There's been 11 customers that they're making sure are using, been in large general service, making sure, and these folks have been contacted, and we're moving to get them back into the correct classification, and that's work they're doing on their own. The audit of the commercial accounts also found that 5 customers were misclassified as large general service when they should be in small general service, so it just shows the improvements generated, I think, by the audit, and then taking the initiative to start working on what we have now. So, and I'm hoping as we move forward with many of the recommendations and changes, those will continue to show up in the manager's report, a way to get information to council as a body and also to the public. And then one more thing, I just want to say that it's been great to see all the activities happening at the library. It's been fun. Open house and game night was held on April 9th, 3 to 5, and I heard those are very popular. So check out what's happening at the library, and I'll turn it back if there's any questions or other items from the manager's report. Yes?
On page 7 in the Assistant City Manager's report, it says see attached map. Where can we find that map?
I can send it to you. I apologize if
No
it was
worries.
not in the packet.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Yep.
Or maybe put it on the website, I don't know, just.
It was in the last packet, but I'll send it to you again.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Councilmember DeMoss?
I just want to say thank you for the thorough reports from all of the department heads, and thank you for taking the initiative to get those accounts classified as to how they should be, especially in the electric department. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Next on the agenda, okay, I wasn't going too fast, we're all good. Okay, next on the agenda is the city manager, or city attorney's report, and that starts on page 24, and I'll turn it over to our illustrious city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another relatively standard month in the legal department, probably 2 general categories. One, sort of ongoing projects. Worked on the recodification and updating of the building and fire codes. That's a fairly extensive project, and the fire chief Kreitz has done a lot of really good work on that, and so I felt like we're making progress. We're getting there. Did a little bit of work with some questions on the forensic audit. had some, we continued to sort of work a bit on fire code enforcement with some existing property owners here in town. There was some advice given about employee campgrounds for the upcoming season. Also looked at some zoning code definitions that are somewhat related to, seasonal workers, and trying to make that a little clearer maybe, or a little more inclusive as to what type of lodging can be provided within the current rules of the zoning code definitions. Some procurement stuff. I think the RFP for gardening services is something we took a look at. It had kind of the ongoing, some lease assignment issues, and there's an ongoing issue with OBI and some contamination on that property, and it's generating, quite a bit of paperwork with ADC that, because the city's the owner, they're going to be involved with. It's not over yet. It's just an ongoing process. Personnel matter, nothing major. And I think that's about it. Oh, you're going to borrow quite a bit of money. I think it's tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and because I finalized the opinion letter. I have to write an opinion letter. Every time you borrow money, the people that are lending you money want to know, A, that the city exists, and B, nobody's claiming that you're an illegal government, and C, and then most importantly, they just want me to put my insurance policy on the line or something that says, oh yeah, they really did adopt this resolution, and so I make the clerk send me the resolution and make sure someone signed it, and then I, write this, I don't actually have to write that much, but I have to do a little bit of back and forth, so. And the other project we're working on does have to do with, I think there's going to be an effort about parking enforcement this summer, and it's still kind of in progress. I think it'll come forward to you within the next month, maybe a meeting in May. And it has to do sort of with setting up the system for enforcing parking rules, but using less expensive employees than uniformed police officers. I think that sums it up. I can take some questions. Oh, there was a plating, some plating details on the property that you sold to Chugachme that took a bit of work and helped the administration work through that as well.
Great, thank you. You're looking very dapper in your tie today, so I'll just check with the dais and see if there's any questions for the city attorney. No, thank you so much. Yeah, your reports are also very thorough and helpful, so thank you for that. Next on the agenda is Borough Assembly report by our Borough Assembly representative, Cindy Eklund.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Let me just thank you ahead of time. Not only do you have to go to all of your meetings, you also come to keep us informed and the citizenry informed, so I want to thank you for that, Cindy.
Thank you, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't get my written report in the packet, but if anybody wants it, I can send it out. I've subbed 7 of the last 10 days, and I'm subbing 3 this week, and it's wonderful to work at the schools. I just love it, so, and I appreciate all the subs that have been there. So, on to my report. At the April 5th Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly meeting, the following items of interest to the Seward community were on the agenda. Ordinance 2022-04, adopting the updated 2022 Kenai Peninsula Borough Community Wildfire Protection Plan was enacted. And the link for this plan is at www.ktb.us/CWPP. And I had some concerns about this updated plan after I received a call from an East Kenai Peninsula resident that their fire insurance was being canceled because they had trees within 300 feet of their home. And so each time this has come on the agenda, I questioned Brenda all about it, and she said she'd never heard of it, and it's like insurance company canceling, and so I was informed it wasn't on there, but if any other people are getting calls from their insurance company or letters canceling their fire insurance, I'd like to know about it so we can see where the discrepancy is happening, so thanks. Then Ordinance 2022-06, was authorizing the negotiated sale of 183.234 acres in the Cooper Landing area for the part of the Sterling Highway milepost 45 to 60 realignment project to the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for a negotiated amount over appraised value. Hearing will be on 4/19. The purchase price was $2,122,900. So DOT is paying $11,585.73 per acre for that property just on the road. Ordinance 2022-07 was introduced, adopting the 2022 Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly and the Board of Education apportionment plans and submitting the apportionment plans to the voters, sponsored by President Brent Johnson and Bill Elam. It was set for the public hearing on 4/19/2022. The committee is required by statute to supply two options to the voters. One is very similar to our current 9-member districts, and then the second option is for 11 districts. The 11-district option separates the east side of the Seward Highway going north out of town, so most of, all the way to north of Bear Creek, and much of Nash Road from Seward, from our community. So you can get those maps on the borough website, but it's a 75 megabyte document that you'd have to download, so Vice Mayor McClure might know where those maps could be got a little easier, but we've got till October to vote on it. Ordinance 2021-1943 has a hearing on 4/19 as well, and it's redirecting the excess funds from the appropriated U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Japanese Creek feasibility study, which the city of Seward passed at your last meeting or a month ago. And this was for the Seward Bear Creek fire or flood service areas monies to be redirected for that. And one assembly member asked why the borough didn't just move the transfer landfill site instead of spending additional monies to keep that road open. What else was down that road? The mayor responded to him that it's not that easy to move that, and there's a subdivision nearby that needs the protection from the levee. And I also let them know that the gun range was down that road and that our public safety officers use it for their practice. Ordinance 2021-1946, amending the grantee for the homeless shelter funds related to the State of Alaska Healthy and Equitable Communities Program. Hearing will be on 4/19. I know that there's some people involved in the Seward area in this homeless project, and there were some problems originally taking the money that was appropriated, the grant, and giving it to the homeless shelter. There was just some issues with their organizational structure. And so now it's going to go through Love Inc., which is a long-established nonprofit in that area. Resolution 2022-020 approved the memorandum of understanding for sharing the geographic data and imagery with cities and cities that the borough has, which I met with Assistant City Manager Saul a couple of weeks ago, and it was hard to get to it, so now hopefully it'll be easier to get to all those floodplain and floodway maps that they have. Resolution 2022-21 adopted the Siren Warning System Memorandum of Agreement with the City of Homer and authorized the mayor to sign substantially similar agreements with Seward and Soldovia. Remember that faux pas we had last year with the sirens? Well, hopefully this will take care of it. That's the hope. Resolution 2022-023 was approved, and that is supporting House Bill 367, which was on the legislative priority list for the borough that went down to Juneau, and it's an act relating to the Planning Commission apportionment for first and second class boroughs. And currently the Borough Planning Commission has to follow state statutes, which appoints based on population. And so recently they had to go up to 14 members from 11 because of the population changes. And I believe that if House Bill if this passes, that the intent of the sponsors of this resolution will be to make the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission a 9-member commission, similar to the Assembly and the School Board. Currently, the East Kenai Peninsula has a planning commission designee, and so does the city of Seward, so that would make that change. And that's all I have.
Great.
Any
Are there any
questions?
questions for our borough representative? Go ahead.
Maybe I'll just add on to what you said about the reapportionment. I mentioned this, I think, at the last meeting, that I was on the committee for that, and we were required to put 2 options to the voters every 10 years. And so, even though our committee pretty much unanimously felt that 9 members was a good thing, we had to come up with an 11-member map also. So both of those are on, then now the Assembly has to approve the language and everything and the maps that will go on the ballot. But yeah, the 9-member keeps things pretty, well, our area is exactly the same. It just changed a little bit up towards Nikiski and Kenai. So anyway, if you have questions about that, I'm probably the local one on that, so.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Do we have the seat filled for the borough planning?
They received an application this week from, I believe, a member of the Seward Planning Commission, Troy
Staggs.
Staggs. And I think there's another person who's interested in putting in an application.
Any other questions? Thank you again for being here. Next on the agenda is other reports and announcements. We do have on here a quarterly report from the Port and Commerce Advisory Board. I don't see anyone in attendance. We did meet with that board last week. So maybe if there's just a written report submitted at some point, we'll just distribute it to council or include it in a packet. Thank you. Next is presentations, and we have Green Forensic Accounting presentation to the city. You are on deck. I might just note for the public, presentations at the council meeting are limited to 10 minutes. The accounting firm did a great job. We had a special meeting previous to this that can be found on YouTube starting tomorrow morning. If you want to see their full report, that would be where you can find that. And I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. My name is James Edmonstone. I'm with Green's Forensic, and I'm here with Jim Scordo, who's also with Green, and we performed the forensic audit for the city. And we're going to limit our comments to the recommendations if they, when they show up here on the screen. Okay, well, I'll go off my phone.
I don't know.
Because you're up.
We know, it was half an hour ago, it's up.
We have hard copies of it.
You could just.
Do you need a hard copy?
No, I've got it here.
Yeah, no, no.
Okay, as I go through the recommendations, I'll give just a slight bit of background. Our first recommendation is that the city should standardize its definitions across the tariffs, ordinance, and regulations. When we looked at the city's tariffs, we were looking at the definition specifically of what a residence is, and we found there was a discrepancy as you look at the different tariffs. And in our report, we've actually built a chart that walks you through how the definition is different, and we believe there should be one definition of each subject. We'll start with the residence to stay on there, across every city document, so when a customer or a resident looks at the utility bill in this case, that they're not confused thinking they have one definition for one utility and a different definition for other utility. We also saw some items were not included in the actual tariff. For example, a residence being rented out as a B&B, or I guess they call it Airbnb. And so we felt there were some holes, and then we also felt that there was some confusion in some of the definitions, and also there was cases where they had definitions, or the city had definitions that really weren't practical or enforceable. Our second recommendation was the electrical invoicing should be a separate function with billing performed by the electrical department. We made this recommendation in concert with the utility director. The reason we felt that is because electric utility bills, they have a standard format that may be different than you see for your water bills. Right now, your waters are either metered or they're on the equivalent residential units, and the utility bill the electric is based upon consumption. And then at certain levels, there are other charges and demand charges, and the utility bills follows a certain format, a pretty standardized format across the country, but the water bills may come with a different format, and there also may be different definitions, and it's confusing. Our third recommendation is we believe the ERUs, or the equivalent residential units, should be phased out. We have a number of reasons for that. We found as we went around and interviewed customers in September, they didn't fully understand how the ERUs were calculated and how they were responsible for their water bill. We also measured how accurate ERUs are compared to meters. We did some cross comparisons which are shown in our report, and we found that they were not that accurate. Then we also found that the database of ERUs wasn't really supported. So a customer could be being billed 3 ERUs, but if I went to the city and said, why did you bill this particular customer 3 ERUs, they don't have a report or a database that says it's because of this reason, and this reason. Then we found that ERUs were not always sensitive to unusual situations. For example, when the pandemic hit, the customers who are on meter would automatically have received a lower bill because they just weren't using the water, but those who are on ERUs would have continued to receive the standard bill because there was no mechanism in place to give them relief when they weren't using their business. And then we also found that the ERUs, for some businesses, they weren't reflective of the business's actual situation. So for example, if a business is measured based upon certain criteria, and the criteria may exist, but it may not be being used, then you have a customer paying for something because it's there versus being used. Take a beauty salon or a barber shop where they may have chairs that are installed into the floor, but they don't have the customer base or the employees to justify the use of their chairs, but because the chairs are there, they're going to be billed for them. And there are other examples, and take a church, for example, where the church not only is billed for the church, but if they have an area that is being used for get-togethers, and they would have a sink or a kitchen, for example, and then they have tables, they're going to get billed for that, although they hardly ever use it, and it's most likely not impacting their actual water usage. We also believe that trying to maintain the ERU would require periodic audits of customers, and they can be rather intrusive when you go in and start counting chairs and things, and it's not cost effective. So we're recommending something along the lines of metering and maybe for commercial businesses, and then looking at alternatives for residences. Our next recommendation, there needs to be a system of checks and balances. We found that as we went through the city systems, for example, when data is being inputted, there's really not a criteria set up for who can make the inputs and who double checks them and things like that. And we think you should build checks and balances so that the person who is making the inputs isn't the person who's sending out the bills, not the person who's receiving the funds. And power factor. Now, power factor represents the efficient use of electricity. It only affects large businesses. It's been in the tariff for many years. It's been looked at for many years, but it's actually not being billed to the appropriate customers. And it's our recommendation that the customers the city knows pretty much, they've identified which customers should be charged for power factor, and the city should be working with those customers to prepare them for being charged for it, and then the city should put the necessary components in place to actually charge for the power factor, because we believe they're leaving a fair amount of money on the table. And the whole purpose of the power factor is to make more efficient use of the power that's being consumed. Cost of power adjustment. The purpose of the cost of power adjustment is to recover the cost the city is paying to its utility. And currently, it's not that straightforward, because in addition to the monthly bill that the city receives, the monthly bill incorporates periodically, sometimes very sizable adjustments. And up to this point, there's been some decisions to spread those, which is in the tariff, that they can spread those adjustments over time. But and the city's been doing this through a very large spreadsheet. But when you do that, it gets very confusing, and you really can't follow, and it's hard to determine whether or not the city's recovering all of its money that it paid the utility. So we're recommending that the city include a general ledger account so they can follow it. And then in subsequent discussions, we also discussed the idea of doing one flat rate for 12 months and then adjusting it versus trying to adjust it every month or 2 months. And then you would incorporate everything that happened for the prior period. Also, in the cost of power adjustment are some costs related to the operation of the emergency generation system, and we recommended that they be separated into its own adjustment, and the city consider starting a reserve fund. So, because fuel is so expensive and the emergency generators use a great deal of fuel if they have to run for any period of time, and the city basically built a financial kitty. So if there is something that's not a real hit to the consumers, if they had to run for a day or two. Sort of like the homeowners association sending up a reserve fund for capital improvements and maintenance of the property. When we came up to do the audit, we were tasked with reviewing invoices, but what we found was they do not maintain copies of invoices, and we had to go through a lot. So our process was that we had to go through and analyze billing statistics. And it was a more cumbersome task, and we're recommending that the city maintain electronic copies of the invoices they're sending out to their customers. So if a customer has a complaint or a question or anything else, they can immediately pull it up and look at the same document that the customer is looking at. And finally, going back, this ties into our prior recommendations a little bit, tracking logs. The city should be maintaining tracking logs and input logs, so when changes are made to the system, the city understands who made the change. And then if changes are being made, depending upon the type of rate, so for example, if somebody went in and they made a change for a rate for a customer, then that change should be approved real time by an authorizing person before the rate can go into effect. And then for other changes, because there's going to be administrative changes to any system, there should be a log created that is at least weekly, signed off by a member of management, that management can go through there and see what's happened and approve it. And then the person's making the changes will not have access to the money and other things. It's basically a segregation of duties. So that's in a nutshell our recommendations from this audit.
Thank you very much. And just to let you know, for the public, the whole report is available. I think you sent it out to your group as a laydown, and it'll be included in the documentation with this meeting.
Correct, and it's been uploaded to legislative history already. Yes.
And then, thank you. Are there any, we did have the time for discussion and questions. Are there any follow-up questions to the report tonight? No, thank you for coming, also attending this meeting and giving those recommendations again. We appreciate it. And thank you both for traveling to Sewardton.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next on the agenda is ordinances for public hearing and enactment. Ordinance 2022-007. Madam Clerk, if you could read that into the agenda.
Ordinance 2022-007 is amending Seward City Code, Chapter 8.15.145, allowing more flexible use within the construction site camping provision. This ordinance was introduced on March 29th, 2022, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Thank you, and I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the enactment of ordinance 2022-007.
I approve.
And I'll turn it over to administration for just a presentation, please.
Good evening, everybody.
Director Bickling in the audience.
Yeah, thank you. Jason, step to the podium. Thank you, Jeanette, for being on the phone with us tonight. Go ahead, Jason.
So just a comment on this. This is the basic code here has existed for quite a while, but we did want to open it up a little bit because we know that housing is obviously a very large issue, and you can use construction zones for camping for those workers, but we have a lot of construction sites that don't have enough room because of zero lot lines and those kinds of things, and so we want to make it so that if their construction crews are doing multiple projects, they don't all be camped out on the project they're working on, but maybe the one that has a little more space for that project, just to, or if construction crews want to work together, or they're using subcontractors, all that kind of stuff. It just makes it so that they don't actually have to be camping on the site that they're on, and just kind of create some flexibility within that. So, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. First, we'll turn it over to public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak during the public hearing portion?
I don't have anyone signed in.
Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and now we're ready to go back for questions. Jeanette, I know you heard that, and then Jason's coming back to the podium, and I'm turning it back to the dais if there's any questions for the Community Development Director. Councilman Lucido.
Just a quick one. You're saying this would allow crews to stay on other sites or designated sites for those construction, so are we talking like someone's private property, or what are we talking about?
No, this is just for construction, like designated construction sites.
For the same company?
Doesn't mean that, like, if construction crews want to work together because, hey, we don't have enough space in this site, maybe we have a big construction site over here and there's more camper trailers type of thing, we're just trying to create some general flexibility. Now, we're not going to create, like, new sites.
Okay,
So,
thank
yeah.
you. That answered it.
Good clarification. Vice Mayor?
I think there's a clerical error perhaps in section 2. It reads, "This ordinance shall take effect 10 upon adoption." I'm not sure what that means.
Just as it's put in a day in there?
10 days.
10 days?
Thank you. Take that as a housekeeping.
Okay.
Good catch. Anything else? Councilmember Nick?
I just have a question to clarify. So basically, this will be an application that they will file with the city manager or a designee. And is there a time limit, like, once the construction's stopped? Is it an annual application, or? It is.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're going to have a construction season, obviously.
Right.
And as long as they're working on that or working on a site, it doesn't have to necessarily be on that site, but they could be camping here, working over there. As long as they are actively working on that site, they can stay. They can be staying wherever they're staying at. So technically, I mean, if they decide to work throughout the winter, because they're doing like interior work and they were staying over here, that would just be a continuation of that permit. But if they were to come back next year, they would just say, hey, we're going to be camping out here again this year, and then you just give them another permit for that year.
Follow-up questions? Go ahead.
So I guess, who would be watching this is what I'd want to, who's going to make sure they're still working, who's going to make sure, I mean, is there a group or a agent? I mean,
I think we're pretty, like, between us and the building inspectors, we're pretty aware of, like, who's working on what at any given time. And if not, usually if we miss something, the public is usually pretty good at pointing that out for us.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we're usually pretty actively involved, and the building department and us are working together pretty tightly to making sure that we are circling back around and just in general, building stuff, or, you know, CUPs, that type of thing. And so we're monitoring it well, but we have a pretty active public that helps us also stay on top of it.
So, and I might just point out that it does say in the code not to exceed the length of the project. So to me, if a project is issued a certificate of occupancy, that would be a good demarcation point.
Right.
The building department might have something else,
Right.
but that would be, seems like something pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cuthbert.
So I just want to, just because some of the, like, I see what I see, but then I heard you say something different. So if I have 3 lots, let's say, and they're all up to 0 lot line, and I want to construct one of them, I can invite my contractors to come down and camp on one of the ones that we're not building on. And then if Harry over there has another one, that he just has 1 lot, I can tell him his construction crew can come camp on my lot.
Yeah, but
And-
so, but the lots that they're camping on have to be either kind of like semi-construction sites or being planned on being developed type of work, you know, so that way we're not having, it's not just camping on any empty lot, but it's camping on a lot that's either to be used for development.
Yeah, any empty lot is, right?
Actively.
No plan on, sorry.
Yeah, but like, you know, like right now, we know that like if someone's gonna be coming in demolishing some stuff, and in the meantime, they're having a couple of construction crews, they can go ahead and stay on that demolished site. That's an active construction site.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a comment. So as a person who built his own house here in town, I bought 3 city lots, and some years ago, and built my house, and tried to live on my property in my RV, and at that time was told I couldn't, and had to drive back and forth, because the place where I found was actually Moose Pass, so I had to keep driving back and forth every day, and I think this is great. Not only is it great for the environment, less traffic, yada, 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 but the crews there on the property, and they can get the work done, and, or individual homeowners who are in my position, you know, who I'd had to buy property, tear a house down, and then I brought my RV in, and it only took about a week before I was told to move it. So I'm in full support of this.
And I did talk with with developers that when we were doing projects, and they said this would be very helpful to them because they don't have places for their crews to stay. So.
Great. I might just make a comment. I'm also in support of this. I think there's a number of large projects coming to our city, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to house those workers. And this again is a case of people solving their own housing issues. But I also want to say, you know, as we start to see this being implemented, if there ends up being unforeseen consequences, like as always, I think that we need to adapt and just watch and make sure if there's any issues. But
Absolutely.
I think this makes sense, at least for now, until we find out something different. Thank you. Good solution. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, if we could call for a vote, please.
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 2022-007. Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Casagranda?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Osanga?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Next on the agenda is resolutions requiring public hearing. The one and only is Resolution 2022-046. Madam Clerk, if you could read that into the minutes.
Resolution 2022-046 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a new 20-year lease with 2 5-year options to extend with Pacific Resurrection Bay Seafood for parcel 148-23009 and parcel 148-23010 in the Seward Recording District, 3rd Judicial District, State of Alaska, consisting of approximately parcel A, 19,756 square feet, and parcel B, 33,572 square feet, more or less.
And I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2022-046.
And that starts on page 31, and I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll turn it over to administration to kind of set the stage, please. Jeanette, is that you?
Yes, it is, Madam Mayor, thank you. I'd also ask that, since it city manager to jump in when needed. There were some questions that were asked, and I have an email that I'm going to read, and it's from the harbor master, who could not be there this evening, but he states that the main clearance is privately owned, that's why it's not in this lease. Not sure, he was speaking of the right-of-way, not sure of the right-of-way. It is on-street parking just like any other business. This land helps the fisheries out when boats moor in the Seward Harbor. The funds go into the general fund. Any harbor leases that he takes care of are 50-50 split. Finance takes care of all the billing and receiving of funds, and that's why it goes into the general fund. We're unsure of why the lease expired before the renewal is most likely missed, so it automatically goes month-to-month lease until it is renewed. The lease payments never go down. I do have to correct them out. All the leases get reappraised every 5 years. He understands that there's a dumpster issue, and that can be solved by Alaska Waste. Their grammar errors are housekeeping issues. There was a remark about that. The new Lowell Creek tunnel will not affect the fisheries. It is over 300 feet deep there. Private land buildings are not going anywhere. The owner of the building needs to pay for the removal. It needs to be removed. The attorney can speak to any bond question, and stated, I do not think we are legally able to ask for a bond when no other lease in the city requires a bond. And regarding the current annual lease rate, it is $8,400 plus sales tax of $35 a month. Penalties are calculated at 10.5% annum, plus $2.50 a month. And that's the information I have from the harbor master.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and, is there anything else the administration wants to add? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, is anyone signed in?
No, ma'am.
Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item during public hearing? Seeing and hearing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. I just have a quick question. So, to our city attorney, it's standard you would have reviewed this lease in this resolution, is that correct, sir? Or someone from your firm?
I did not. This looks to me like it's pretty much restated. It's what's called a restated lease that changes the term and adjusts the rent. So whether someone else from my firm did, I can't speak to that. But this isn't anything. I'm looking at this now, and these are all pretty much the exact same wording that was in the existing lease, which technically expired in the fall of 2021. We have, in connection with other leases that have either been renewed or assigned or somehow changed, kind of looked at the standard language that the city uses and didn't notice anything that caused my hair to raise up or anything like that. So, I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb to say, is this word misspelled, or is there some, should there be a comma here or something like that? But you can kind of rest somewhat assured that our office has looked at the standard language that the city uses, and this appears to be using that same language.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for Vice Mayor?
Not a question, but I just wanted to say I appreciate the statements by the administration that clarified some of the questions that the constituent had asked. I really appreciate hearing what Jeanette just gave us.
Yeah, and I kind of caught that there might have been some question about a bond requirement in the lease, and regardless of whether or not the city asked for that in some other lease, the fact is, as a property owner can negotiate whatever provisions they want in a lease, and there's not necessarily any obligation on a public property owner to have identical provisions in every single lease it has. So you don't have to worry, obviously there's some boundaries, like you can't put requirements in based on the color of someone's skin, certain characteristics of your tenant, but in general, you can put in terms in a lease that are unique to a particular piece of property.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Just one of the things that I'd like to maybe get a little more clarification on so that everybody understands why it's not there is the part of the property, the parcel that the building itself is on, because it says that the building is privately owned, so the land that it's on is not part of the lease. Is that something we could just get a little clarification on? Because that parcel is not included in the lease.
Is it, and to the city manager, is it the property and the building are privately owned? Is that piece of property not a city piece of property? Is that why it's not included in the lease? We could probably take a recess and see what the borough property listing is for that. I guess I read that it was privately owned. I know it said the
Madam Mayor,
bill.
the email states that the main plant is privately owned, that's why it's not in the lease. There's no further explanation, but we could take a glance at the borough record and, just to verify.
I'll second for a short recess.
Yeah, maybe we don't need a second. We can take a look, just to be clear. Okay, well, let's take 5 minutes and we'll just check the borough listing. Thank you. Okay, we'll
And we are back on.
go ahead and get back on the record. I think we're being careful not to discuss offline, so I think multiple people have been looking it up and checking it out. Who wants to mention what they found?
Madam Mayor, I did just receive a text from the harbor master. He said private, Margaret Anderson owned the property before she sold it to RBS. We just leased the land north and south of the property.
Okay, so I will say that looking it up on the assessing page, they don't always have accurate or current information.
Correct.
So, you know, I don't know if you know, I feel like if it would have been a leasable piece of property, I mean, we're patterning what it was leased at prior to. I guess I don't know that I have any concerns, but other council members might have concerns. So, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to address, there was a question about whether this legislation received attorney review, and yes, it did. Sam Severin and Brooks's office did review the legislation and mark yes on page 33 on the agenda statement.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I have a comment about the response regarding the lease. So I drove down there today and addressed some of the email concerns that we had, and, you know, checked out the dumpster and where there's trash stored and that type of stuff. One of the responses we got was where their employees are parking is on public land, and the response, I believe, was, that's public parking. I can almost guarantee that if we try to drive down there and park down there this summer, that they will walk over and tell you to move, that that's employee parking. Because I've heard it from the people when they're out there snagging salmon, are they allowed to park there? Right? So so I can understand the citizen's comment regarding why are they leasing some land but not the other land, and yet they're still using it and treating it as it is part of their property. So that is concerning to me. I think it should be, if it's public property, then the public should know they're allowed to park there, and if they want to walk over and snag salmon and they end up taking up that entire lot, where are all their employees going to park? They're not, right? So that's all I have to say about that.
Councilmember.
So just as devil's advocate,
Please.
I've parked on this lease lot when I go there on the north side, where, I mean, I park there to walk my dog. So I'm kind of thinking trade-off, I don't know, I mean, I know it's not official, I know it's not above board, but I parked where this leased land lines are many times. And no one's come out and said, hey, you can't park there, I'm leasing that lot. You're in my, you know, no one's kicked me off it. Just as an observation, that's all.
Absolutely.
Just an observation.
Any further discussion? I guess just to add to that is, when leasing property, we do need to make sure that people stay within their lease boundaries, or they do need to lease additional land. So this seems to be either an enforcement issue potentially with the harbor master administration, or a discussion item if they want to increase their square footage. But at this point, I would like to get them back into the fold instead of doing month to month and have you know, another lease with them, and then just ask administration to follow up and make sure that they're paying for all the property they're using, or they can get back within their lease boundaries. There's kind of two choices to be made here. So that's my opinion on it. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, let's call for a vote, please.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2022-046, Casagranda,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Dumas,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is unfinished business items, Resolution 2022-014. So this resolution was postponed from the February 14th meeting, so we do not need a motion in a second. It's already on the floor.
Correct, but may I read the title?
Yep.
To the record. Resolution 2022-014 is approving the Historic Preservation Commission priorities from February February 2022 to February 2023. And as you said, this resolution was postponed on February 14th, 2022. Your main motion is on the floor.
Great, thank you. And the resolution actually starts on page 76. We had a great meeting with the boards and commissions, including the Historic Preservation Commission, 2 weeks ago. And the city manager did a great job of kind of collecting some of the changes that we talked about with that board. And, you know, I might just start going through the amendments proposed, and we'll see how they go and if there's any changes or something that's missed. This is just a good place to start. So the first bullet, under Seward Historic Structures and Sites, to change strike review and add provide research about, and then the local projects, strike and recommendations about, and substitute regarding the effects on properties identified in the local historic preservation inventory. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
And so just to clarify the motion, the new first bullet will read, provide research about local projects regarding the effect of properties identified in the local historic preservation inventory. So is there any discussion about that? Okay, Madam Clerk, can we call for a vote?
Voting on the First Amendment, Demas,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
So the primary amendment for that second one, looks like it's the same.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's the same. The fifth bullet under Seward Historic Site, Structures and Sites, so count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it currently starts with engender. I'll make a motion to strike engender and substitute provide research regarding, and then that continues the preservation and use of the Jesse Lee home properties for park use.
I'll second.
And so, with that second, I'll read that bullet, we'll read in its entirety, provide research regarding the preservation and use of the Jesse Lee home properties for park use. Is there any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Voting on that amendment, and may I ask, would you provide me with these changes?
They're in the packet.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
read
you.
them right, it's
Appreciate
page
that.
79, yeah?
I didn't realize that, thank you. Voting on the Second Amendment, Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
And then the bullet underneath there, I'll make a motion to strike the sixth bullet, it's in its entirety.
I'll second.
And that was, we decided that that had been completed, so the commission agreed to taking that off. And then, the first bullet under Seward Historic Preservation Plan, my motion is to strike the promulgate economic incentives and substitute provide historical preservation and education.
I'll second.
And so that amendment would read in its entirety for that bullet, provide historic preservation and education. Is there any discussion?
Do we need to do anything with this? I'm sorry.
Say, do we need to vote on?
Oh, oops, did I skip through that one? Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's vote on the striking the sixth bullet. Sorry, I'm going through my list. Strike in its entirety the sixth bullet under Seward Historic Structures and Sites.
And that was motion Terry and second McClure.
Okay.
Is that correct?
No, that
I
one.
think it was second me.
Demas,
Demas.
thank you. Okay, voting on that amendment to strike the sixth bullet. McClure,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Demas.
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
and Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Now let's read back to, we have a motion and a second for the first bullet under Seward Historic Preservation Plan. And that would read in its entirety, provide historical preservation and education. Is there any discussion? No, Madam Clerk?
Okay, voting on that amendment. Casagranda,
Yes.
Demas.
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
And then under Seward Historic Preservation Plan, strike the third bullet, advance the historic business district.
I'll second that.
And so since there's a motion and a second, I would advocate for this. I know we're talking about it later, but I think it's just too soon at this point because it hasn't yet, we're going to talk about it later if it's even going to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'd like it stricken out of this resolution for now, and then the tasking will be, if we set up a meeting, then that's how that task will move forward, if that's our choice. So this one's just a little premature to what we're talking about later in the meeting. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Okay, voting on that amendment, Demas,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Bosenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
So the main resolution is back on the floor. Are there any further amendments, discussion, questions?
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
I included under permanent amendment number 2 that language because I remember there being discussion, but I don't remember there being a clear direction. So I thought I would leave that just for you, for the council to discuss if you wanted to. I just remember there being discussion around amending it.
Okay. Let me check my notes. I didn't have, there probably was some discussion, but I don't know that I think we're fine with that. So thanks for making sure that that was still highlighted. And then if there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote on the resolution as a whole.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2022-014 as amended, Casagranda,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Bosenga,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is new business items. Resolution 2022-052, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2022-052 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a 3-year sole source agreement with T2 Systems to provide parking enforcement and permit management software in an amount not to exceed $31,297 and appropriating funds.
I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2022-052.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Okay, and we'll look to, that starts on page 105, but we'll look to administration. City Manager, I know we have you on the phone, and Tyler stepped up to the podium.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Defer on that one. Madam Mayor, Council, for a little background information on this resolution, so Parks and Recreation is tasked with managing paid city parking lots in and around the harbor area, May through September each season. As I'm sure you're all aware, we receive a large influx of visitors throughout that time. And one of the issues we've observed is accompanying that large influx of visitors and parking is also a substantial amount of parking violations. To effectively manage parking in those lots and to promote legal parking, we've worked on a variety of solutions. Some of the solutions we brought forward to council early last year was an idea for automated parking gates. During that session, some of the issues we identified and we really drilled down on are some of the core issues would be that we have an ineffectual citation scheme and enforcement system currently. And we also have a lack of reliable on-call towing services. So to address those issues, we presented automated parking gates as one potential solution. We've issued an RFP for vehicle towing services with no proposals received for that. So this resolution brought to you before you tonight is really just the latest in a series of solutions that we're trying to bring forth to better manage the parking lots and help address parking violations. Specifically what we're looking at here is we've had extensive conversations with PD, with the city attorney, administration, as well as other parking management authorities from around the state, around the nation, about best practices, how they handle things.
in some of the steps we've identified, as alluded to earlier, is one where we'll be bringing forth shortly a ordinance for parking enforcement citations, fine schedules, that more concretely defining that language in city code so it's more clear, so it gives us more clear authority for how to manage and to conduct compliance and enforcement in those city-owned lots. So part of that solution is this T2 up-safety mobile parking, I'm sorry, not mobile parking, but the digital compliance and online permitting software system. I know there were some questions about cost comparison. For instance, we've used a system called Secure Park in recent years where the baseline annual subscription cost is essentially comparable, it's essentially equivalent, about $3,000 a year. There are a lot more upfront costs to onboard this system, but these are generally more one-time costs just to get the system up and going. That includes the hardware package, the handheld scanners, the data plan, the customization, and so on and so forth. So the reason we're pursuing the solution, we think it'll be a really helpful part of the puzzle piece to help solve this problem, is that it's fully integrated with the rest of our parking payment platform right now that we use with T2. Like we just went through actually recently we're also setting up mobile pay through T2 as well. So in every lot that we have that's kiosk, whether it's kiosk or mobile pay, this system will be fully integrated, which means our patrollers will be able to look up instantaneously any vehicle in any lot and know whether or not they have paid. And it also, I think one of the unique benefits too, though, is it also offers services like vehicle information lookup records for a nominal fee, which is, again, part of the puzzle piece that we're lacking right now, is we have no way to really connect citations to the vehicle and never really effectively be able to follow up on citations. Just for reference, I'll cut it short here quickly. So our compliance rate is around 17% for citation payment.
17, I'm sorry.
About 17%. It's not the greatest data set in the world, but that is a pretty reliable figure, which equates to about $30,000 in lost revenue a year. I just say that just to put a dollar figure to it. We're not interested in parking enforcement as a revenue generation service. Our utopia is everyone parks legally and everyone has a great time. They enjoy their stay and go about their business. And but it's good to know about, just because obviously we have to take revenue and expenses into account when we're talking about solutions. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Very helpful overview. I might give it first to the person who took it off the consent agenda, then I'll come back to you. Councilmember Wells?
So first I'd like to explain why I took it off the consent agenda. I tried very hard today to speak with somebody at Parks and Rec, but nobody was available. I could not figure out how we generate this $30-some thousand back. And you just said that this system isn't for generating parking revenue, it's just for keeping track. Well, if all we're doing is keeping track, why are we spending $30-some thousand?
So,
And I wanted to see some documentation on a spreadsheet of some sort that says there's this many vehicles that we will now be able to enforce, there's this much additional revenue that'll come in to compensate the $30-some thousand, not just this is one of our solutions, we think it'll work. So that's why I asked to have it brought up for discussion.
And then it sounds like
It's a very similar question.
Go ahead.
When we discussed this before, or similar things about the gating and all that, you did have figures of how much potential loss we have by people not paying for parking. That, I would like to see that number, because that's what we're going to make up by enforcing parking And it was a substantial amount, I think, right? Do you have those figures?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, but that was the figure I just cited earlier.
Can you, can you repeat that a little bit more clearly then?
Well, yeah, but because what I heard you say was, we only have 17% payment on citations, which accounts for $30,000 a year.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear enough. I
Okay,
misspoke.
okay.
We don't, so that 70% is the actual loss that we're experiencing right now on unpaid violations is approximately $30,000
Per year.
per year. And that's just based off of the citation that we issued, and that data was generated essentially just by one patroller and one season.
Okay, I think that made it more clear, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you know that? And so you say it's dedicated, it's from one patroller or one season. I would just like to see that, the actual facts and how you came up with these numbers. It just seems strange that the amount of money that this system cost is almost equal to the amount estimated loss. But yet we don't have any tangible evidence.
Well, I think the $30,000 is over a 3-year period, is my understanding.
Correct,
Correct?
Madam Mayor. Indeed. So again, the one-time upfront costs on board the system, the actual annual base subscription is, I think it's about $3,000 per license annually, which is equivalent to the secure parking system that we've used before. Councilman Wells, just to speak to the other point I believe you brought up, which is, yes, these citations do generate revenue. I mean, it is revenue. Parking is an enterprise fund. It goes back, so it goes back into that fund. The primary issue that I'm trying to address, though, and the one that we hear most often from everyone, it's less about, it's more, people get very upset when people are parked in handicapped parking spots, when they're blocking access to parking lots, when they're camping their vehicle, when those quality issues that affect everyone down there, especially visitors and the businesses down there in the center lot. We've received a significant amount of complaints during the summertime, and for us, it's more just, it's a quality of life issue, it's a visitor experience issue, and so that for us is what I primarily look through it to. I mean, we have seasonal parking lot attendants. I mean, if you want to really just look at it from a dollar and cents, it's, we can have $100,000 worth of labor for seasonal parking attendants, and that's what we've had in historical years. And in the seasons when we didn't have that, we saved $100,000. We received a lot more complaints in terms of parking lot management, in terms of lack of enforcement. So, I mean, these are just the solutions we're trying to, develop to help improve the situation.
Damas and then Osenga. Go ahead.
Is that true that we were spending $100,000 just for seasonal parking lot attendance? Because I always heard it was about $10,000.
I'd have to verify that number, council member, but I believe it was because we have a parking supervisor and up to 2 or 3 attendants in any given summer. I think it has been up to $100,000.
I agree with Councilmember Wells. I need to see like a profit and loss just for the parking fund. I want to see what our projected income could be, and with this system, how much labor do we still have to spend, and what that bottom line looks like, I guess.
Councilmember
For me to
Osenga.
go forward.
I'm trying to understand what it is you're asking for here. You're saying this will help manage the citations, or but not necessarily gain enforcement? Or are you saying that this could be a way to start actually collecting the unpaid citations? Is that what you're saying? Because then you're going to have, you also said that it's a little bit of a fee, you have to charge a fee, there's a fee charged for us if we want to find out information about the car. That's a nominal fee?
Yes.
So now you're going to pay, what was it, $3,000 a year or something for it, and then you have to pay for the information that you're trying to get in order to process. So this is like a kind of a stepping stone up into fully hopefully fully enforcing citations in our parking lots.
Yes, council members. So some of the features in concert with the upcoming clearer citation and ordinance and enforcement scheme. For example, a benefit of this system that we currently lack is we have no clear adjudication process. I mean, a lot of the stuff is just, it was just administratively decided some time ago, and that's just how it's done. So through this system, through UpSafety, this compliance and enforcement platform, they have built-in integrated features such as adjudication. So, okay, if we want to actually have citations that we can legally and effectively enforce, and we have to actually follow that code then we need to, but we also don't want to bog down a court system necessarily with a huge number of, not pedestrian, non-criminal, traffic violations essentially. So then that offers a features such as a digital adjudication where someone receives a citation, they can go online to the citation portal, they put in the number and say, hey, you know what? I think this citation was wrong because of A, B, or C, and I'm going to upload a picture of that, and I'm going to send that to, I'm going to request that this citation be adjudicated, and then on the back office, they can see all that instantly. It's tied to the citation number. It can be reviewed in there instead of having to do all this through, it would be so cost prohibitive, which is the reason that I've seen the department has not done it in past seasons. It'd be so cost prohibitive to try and track down these citations manually, via letters and stuff like that, where they offer this service for a nominal fee, like a vehicle information lookup. They can generate the notices on a predefined schedule. So let's say the city code, the updated citation language says, you have up to 30 days to protest, and after 45 days, We can build all those rules, all that ordinance and citation language into the T2 system, and it will follow that verbatim. And that's what they can do. So we already use a digital parking enforcement tool. This is literally just transitioning to one that's more integrated, has more features, and I think would be more compatible with what we're trying to achieve in terms of an overall enforcement scheme.
How much is the software that we're currently using?
Secure Park is, I believe, $3,000 per year for the base software subscription, which is essentially equivalent to this platform. Although it's hard to compare one-to-one, because actually this platform includes a lot of features and capabilities that Secure Park does not have, and also this one contains the online permitting software, which we have currently grafted onto our RecDesk platform, which is effective, but it's not as effective as it would be, and I think it would be a better customer experience. And also, again, it would be fully integrated. All the seasonal permits, which they're currently not, they would actually be fully integrated with our parking compliance and enforcement software. So right now we have to, parking attendants have to reference like 4 different databases to check if the license plate is legally parked, essentially.
Councilmember Calhoun.
To have a chance to get all the information that everybody's asking for, does it hurt if we postpone this to our next meeting? It sounds like to me everybody wants information, and I don't disagree with that at all. And I don't think we're going to get everything we want tonight to make a really good decision on what we're trying to decide here, so.
Did you want to make that motion,
I will
sir?
make a motion that we postpone this to the meeting of April 25th.
I'll second that.
And I might just say that I am in support of this. I think we have a problem in the harbor. I think that this, if we're already using a system and this is a new system that can be integrated, I think that having some consistency, and I want to say again, this is over 3 years, so it's not $30,000 for 1 year, but I think that what we're looking for is, we all have budget books, but maybe that information from the budget. Revenue and also expenditures would be helpful. What we're currently paying. And then, I really hear you saying that this is the first piece, and then we're also working on updating our code so it can, so all of this will work together. So maybe fleshing that out. Is there anything I'm missing?
Yeah, well, what I'd like to see also is what your projection is for hiring parking attendants if we get this whole system, because you mentioned attendants, so are we going to be hiring more?
Is it the same number,
Or what?
like what's in the budget? So, go ahead.
I want to see the projected profit and loss with the new system for just the parking enterprise. So that would include labor cost and everything like that, just for this. And I think that's all. Thank you.
But go ahead. I've already had my say. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask, adding to, sorry, we're giving you a whole bunch of homework.
It's okay.
Adding to everything to be seen, the revenues that you collect from the parking tickets obviously will go back into because it's an enterprise fund. But can you also ask or find out if there would be administrative fees for finance? And if so, what percentage that is, or for administrative fees for the police, any other fees that will go outside of your department? Thank you.
And the last thing I would like to see is, I hear you saying that this is the beginning and then we have all these additional options that we can do, but those cost additional monies. Am I correct?
Some of the features.
Okay, so what I would like to see is what these additional features do actually cost, because I feel like we're not getting the whole picture here. If you're saying we're gonna need these additional features, well, how much are they?
Well, the additional features that cost, those are the ones that are actually listed in the,
So the additional
It's part of it.
features are what you're saying is already in here.
right, they have the price points for what, like, a vehicle information with $1.50 per vehicle, I believe.
Is that to the city or to the user? Like, is that to the city or is it to the person trying to dissuade their ticket?
I'm unclear if that's a fee that can be passed on or not.
So let's clarify something. And I guess I, again, want to say, like, we have a problem in the harbor. Thank you for coming up with additional solutions. I just think we're getting a lot of questions from the public, so we're just going to pass them on to you. Go ahead.
What is the problem in the harbor? Is it just people not paying?
No, I think it's what you're saying. I think it's people parking in emergency lanes and blocking businesses can't get access, and, people overstaying and, free shuttle parking, people are parking in the...
They know they can't be towed, or they won't be towed. It's highly unlikely that they'll be towed. And that our citations, we know these people. We ticket the vehicle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. They just throw it on the ground and walk away because they know we can't follow up. There's nothing we can do to follow up.
So this is a key to help follow. So we will see this at our next meeting once we take a vote and see if the postponement. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Voting on the motion to postpone the resolution 2022-0522 to April 25th. McClure?
Yes.
Casagrande?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Mayor Terry? Yes. That motion is approved.
Next item is other new business items. B2 starts on page 139. And this is, so this is discussing moving forward or next steps with HP's resolution proposing to establish a new historic business district zone. So administration, I think you're, Jeanette, did you want to speak to that?
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for the confusion for the packet. My intention was, because this is your board and they're requesting a future ordinance, and my thought was, does the council want this to happen? And if you do, you should direct that rather than administration directing it. It's your board. So I'm asking for your action, what you would like to do. Send it to Planning Commission or not. So it's your board, so that's what I'm asking for.
So we can just discuss this, we don't have to make a motion at this time. Is there discussion?
I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that I don't, I've had concerns about the focus on the historic downtown business area because I believe that the intent of it is to make these businesses have another layer of regulation, basically, and I think that it's already hard enough to do business in downtown Seward sometimes. And so I believe that the ultimate goal with the historic preservation, which I'm not sure, we've even discussed as a body, is to put limitations on historic buildings in downtown. And people that I've spoken with are strongly against it, so I can't support this. And I don't believe it was a direction from council to necessarily take it to that level, so I'm not sure why it is what it is, really.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I think I can speak on it. I have a lot of historic friends, and I think their intention is to preserve the history of downtown. And I've had conversations with my concern because I have a lot of properties within this district. One property of which I tried to rezone about 1.5 years ago that basically failed because of the desire to preserve the history of it, and it's literally like tear it down so it's a hard one for me too. I know the intent behind the historic preservation is to offer support for people that want to keep on preserving things and make things better. I fear the word guideline. As long as it's to provide recommendations and support, I'm okay with that. But when it starts to become rules or another department that I would have to go through to do something on my building, it already takes a long time. Not a long time, I shouldn't say that, don't get me wrong. Administration works very swiftly, but it would be another, I just don't want to see my permits have to go through another department and especially not another meeting just for me to be able to put a piece of trim on a window. So that's my concern.
Councilmember Wells?
So I did some research on what a historical business district is today and tried to find one within Alaska, and I found one from 2021 out of Skagway online. And instantly I went, oh man, if they want to paint their buildings, there's a paint code. If they want to change the window, change the door, change the siding, anything they want to do. So I was looking through it and I understood maybe some of the reasons why, but the biggest concern that popped to my head was not only do I own a building and now I've got to get permission to do some changes, we don't even have a hardware store. So if I get a broken door, let's say for example, and it has to be a historical door or it has to match these historical buildings, where am I going to get one? And so I think that I understand maybe I understand the intent of this, but I'd like to see it written out what the actual intent is.
Go ahead.
Well, and also, as it reads, we have the downtown historic district already. This is the same boundaries, but it's just adding it to be business, and I don't see the need for that. I think that what we have now is quite adequate. I think people are careful in what they do with the buildings downtown, and this does add another layer, so I think it has to be rethought.
My opinion is at this point, we have a housing problem in this community, and we're asking the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Community Development Department to be key in that. And, you know, I think dividing our efforts and working on this at this point would be detrimental to what we're trying to move forward and do as a community. You know, there's lots of things we haven't identified a decade that's historic for Seward. So, you know, historic means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So at this point, I don't know what would be cleanest if we don't have to, it's been before us, we've had a discussion. I don't hear any motions being made to ask Planning and Zoning to deliberate or work on this any further. So, yeah.
May I just make a clarification to Vice Mayor's comment? So we already have this district and we're just adding the word business?
Well, that's what the, may I? That's what the resolution reads. The first whereas, it gives the definition, and then the second whereas, HP desires to use similar boundaries to establish a new historic business district.
Okay.
So we have a historic district
Right.
already outlined in our code.
Right. We've had that.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yep.
So the historic, all these businesses are already included
Yes.
in that historic district?
It sounds like from this, they want to expand the boundaries a little
Well,
bit, but.
no, it doesn't say that.
Madam, there's no talking in the public right now.
But
Go ahead.
But the second whereas does say use similar
Similar
boundaries.
boundaries.
So I don't know
So-
exactly what that means.
Which regardless, I don't know how much, if we're interested in continuing with this, we can.
I just want to fully understand it. And I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm sorry if I'm...
I guess I don't think that, I don't think that we originally asked them to do this. So at this point, I think as a body, we need to ask them to do this before we even, as a body, take the time to discuss it.
Any other comments? Any motions to be made? Okay. Madam Clerk, next on the agenda is informational items and reports. There are none. Citizen comments. There's no sign-in for this comment period. Time is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none. Next on.
Any topic?
Yep, it's citizen comments.
Cheryl Cease, within city limits. I just wanted to say that the historic overlay and the historic business district use the same boundaries. And our intention was that we not have another Petro building or even the library, the new library in the historic district, neither of which match the buildings that are around them. And we are period sensitive. We don't expect that every building is to be a Brown and Hawkins. The east side of 4th Avenue burned in 1941. Those are not period relevant to the early 1900s. They're the 1940s. And then there's other buildings that are old, or rather newer than that. So the intent was, and even if it remains, the historic overlay, that there be some protections, because all we know is there's a historic overlay, and that's the way it's been for eons. There's been no protection, nothing defined. And I didn't realize that we actually had to have you initiate this. We thought this was part of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, next on the agenda is council and administration comments in response to citizen comments. Jeanette, do you want to kick us off tonight?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really don't have any further comments. I'm not sure, maybe the assistant city managers might have comments.
I'll turn it over to Stephen.
I just want to say thoughts and prayers go out to Norm Regis. He lost a couple dear loved ones this past week, so when you see Norm, give him a hug. Thank you.
Council, we'll start off with Councilmember Wells.
I'd like to say thank you to the administration and department heads who took the time to meet with me last week and this week to go over these resolutions and help me understand. And I appreciate everyone's time and that effort, and to be in there for council when they have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Calhoun.
No comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Cascarende.
No comments.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I have a few. I'll say, first off, congratulations to Commissioner Sullivan for taking the chair seat with planning and zoning. She's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you to Cindy Eklund for being here, reporting on the KPP Assembly meeting. I just really appreciate her interaction with administration and everything, and I just think that's such a great representation for Seward. Congrats and thank you and happy retirement to Matt Chase in the harbor. Thank you to Green Accounting for being here and for all their work. The forensic audit, I don't believe we have all the information that we still need, so I'm looking forward to completing that, moving forward, and I'm really excited about the current administration that we have, and I feel really confident in that process. I think it's going to go in the right direction. And then I just want to thank my fellow council members for, even tonight, I just didn't have time to thoroughly look at a couple things, and it was nice to be able to count on my council members to kind of brief me on a couple things here and there. And so I just really appreciate everybody's work as a team. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Osenga.
No, just be safe out there.
Vice Mayor McClure.
Well, I have a couple things. Congratulations, thank you for remembering about the new planning and zoning chair. I watched that meeting. I really enjoyed watching a planning and zoning meeting. It's very well put together and run, and that was good. I want to point out that my cat is a cover cat on the council packet with his face next to a moose. Reggie is now a star, and he's acting out about that. And spring is here. Spring is here with kids on bikes. Spring is here with kids on bikes that shoot out in front of you sometimes. So be very cautious about that, and happy spring and happy Easter.
Thank you. I just have a couple comments. I just want to say it was a great event at the high school this last weekend. They did an egg hunt, so thanks to the high school principal and those staff members being involved. And yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing, that there are kids about and there's still snow piles.
Oh, that's
so we need to be really careful. There's a lot more sun. Kids are staying out late. And happy spring to everyone also. So right now I'm going to move to go into executive session to discuss the status of negotiations for the purpose of parcels 2405 and 2413 Seward Highway per Seward City Code 2.10.030B4 to include the city manager on the phone, the assistant city manager, the city attorney, and all the council members. So that's my motion. And the second? We're going to take 5 minutes, so I'm going to adjourn this to go into executive session, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
It's prominently recess.
You guys know that?
I never got that.
Here.